first and foremost, all security is personal. It begins with the
Mhm.
individual. So we talk about personal security, right? And so keeping like information security, cybersecurity separate just for a moment, right? All security fundamentally begins with the individual, with the human. And personal security, like the definition of it might be like, the avoidance of violence in one's life, right?
Mhm.
Personal protection, preventing physical assault, preventing a home invasion. Like, personal security starts with violence prevention in the physical world, okay? But then when you look at all security being personal, it's not just in the physical world today. It's obviously, what goes on online as well. Personal security is,
Yeah.
being cyberbullied. It's having your identity stolen. I mean, it doesn't get more personal than your identity.
Welcome to another session of Efani Features, and today I'm happy to say that I have Robert Siciliano from ProtectNow on. And Robert, you've got this fantastic background. I've been looking at your profile for like the last 30 minutes, and I thought I saw something about being on like Fox Business, but it looks like you've been on some big media. I'd like to start out with just a very simple introduction. If you could just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background.
Sure. I am, well, first and foremost, I am a girl dad. I've got a 17 and a 20-year-old. Lots of drama there. And married 25 years. I ride an 87 Harley Davidson. I'm a mariner with the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. And I'm a Bostonian. So I've never parked a car in Harvard Yard ever, just so you know. And I've been engaged in security awareness training for the better part of my life, really since I was a teen and into my 50s, either online or in person. And, the whole goal is to keep my peeps safe and secure.
Well, it looks like you did even some like sort of physical security. Did I read that right? That you did like certification of firearms?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in personal protection, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I got my bones teaching women self defense. I actually started like I'll be quick about this. Like I actually started in regards to personal protection when I was 12 in downtown Boston. People say to me all the time when I get off the platform, like, "What are you like, former CIA, Secret Service, law enforcement? Like you have a military background?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from the streets of Boston, like literally, like
Yeah.
that's where I got my chops." My dad, what he used to, we had a pretty long leash as kids, and he would let us, head into town, get on the train, and one day we get off the train in downtown Boston on Washington Street, and we get up to the street, and there's five kids waiting for us, and they beat me up and they took our money, and I was 12 years old and didn't know what that was all about, and my little brother's sitting on the curb crying, and we go home. I'm all beaten and bloodied. And my father explained to me, well, those boys, they are the wolves, and you and your little brother today were the rabbits. And I was like,
Mhm.
all right. He explained to me predator and their prey in the same conversation. And that was like a brand new thing for me. And then about a year later, I was at summer camp, as kids did and still do. And I met a girl. She was like my first crush. And we were, holding hands on the bus one day. We get off the bus and go to her house. And she is kind of looking all solemn at me. I didn't quite understand why. And she says, I think you should know. And she says, my mother's boyfriend assaulted me. And I didn't
Mhm.
quite understand what she was talking about. And so I go home and I asked my dad, like, what is rape? Because I had no idea what she meant.
Yeah.
I didn't know what sex was, never mind rape. And that was my foray into really personal protection. So from that point on, I started to study predators and thieves, and personal protection to me meant like making sure that like the women in my life weren't assaulted in that way. And so by my mid 20s, I was teaching real estate agents personal protection as well. Realtors in the United States are murdered. Like that's a thing,
Yeah.
Soccer moms and NASCAR dads with no formal, security training go into vacant open houses and bad things happen. And so in the mid 90s, I had my first computer to manage my business and sell product. And my PC in 95 was an IBM PS1 consultant, the make and model with Windows 3.0 and 150 megabyte hard drive. I had a dial-up connection to AOL, and I was accepting credit cards, and I got hacked in the mid 90s. I lost thousands of dollars in credit card fraud. And being in the business of personal security, I wanted to understand like this was a new form of theft that I did not know was a thing. I obviously never experienced it
Yeah.
myself. I didn't know what hacking was, never mind black hats. And as upset as I was losing thousands of dollars, which was a really big thing to me back then, I was enamored by how they did it. I wanted to understand how they did what they did. And, I began to reverse engineer their process and started to see that identity theft was starting to become this fraud that
Yeah.
wasn't even a thing. There wasn't even a law against identity theft prior to the 1998 Assumption and Deterrence Act. And I started to see it all around me and started to speak to it and write about it. And I had already at that point written a book or two. And by the early 2000s is when obviously, data breaches started to become a problem. And you may recall Choice Point was an information broker back in the day, which they had a breach, so to speak, where they really
Yeah.
actually let, I think it was Nigerians in the front door who had bought up a bunch of US citizen socials. And they had a significant breach. And back in the day, they only alerted the state of California residents as to, that their information was compromised because the state of California was the only state in the nation that had data breach notification laws in place. And so around that time, I had already been speaking about it, talking about it. I had already done a bunch of TV, like I had been on all the morning shows and Montel Williams. And then CNN called. They wanted to understand, like, what's this all about? This data breach thing, hacking. And, that from there, I've been doing this now for, I don't know, 30 plus years. And the interesting thing is, and I'm sure you'd agree, that not much has changed in how consumers engage risk management and security. But what has changed is, and I hear it all the time, criminal hackers, they're so sophisticated, but what they really are is they're just organized. And they look at fraud as a business today, but they didn't
Yeah.
back then. Now it's a big time, money operation. And the consumer, moms and pops, small businesses for that matter, don't look at security any differently today than they did 30 plus years ago. And so what I provide today is I bridge that gap between where the employee is now, which is where they were 30 years ago, to where they need to be.
Yeah, I've mentioned in a couple of videos recently that it's no longer that lone hacker in the basement somewhere in their mother's basement. It's now all the way up to organized crime.
Oh yeah.
And so I follow the Asia region a lot because we have some
Right.
property in Southeast Asia. So I see the news about Cambodia, and basically they're like capturing
Myanmar.
people and
Yeah.
forcing them to hack. And so a lot of times, the person that's hacking you doesn't want to hack you. It's that their
No.
life depends on it because they'll end up in a
Yeah.
river if they don't.
Yeah. So
And
if people don't understand that, that's actually like human trafficking, right? Of
yeah,
course, you
yeah,
know that. The UN estimates that there's about 300,000 victims of human trafficking right now. That their whole job, 18 hours a day, is to hack you and I. And when I say hack, like it's a form of social engineering.
yeah, yeah,
They're sending the emails and the text messages. Those wrong number text messages you get, they're perpetrated by robo calls and this and that. But it's done by humans that are being beaten and tortured unless they meet their quotas. And I've met these young women myself because I respond to all those wrong number text messages that we get. I engage, and it's usually a young Asian female, sometimes from Africa as well, that I'll end up meeting online. And when I say meet, like they engage in 6 to 8 text messages a day to me,
yeah.
as like this lonely guy. And they sent a photo and good morning, dear. I hope you slept well last night. And then sending me throughout the day photos of themselves grocery shopping, their grocery cart, what they're buying for food, yoga with the girlfriends. What they're having for dinner. They tell me they're meeting with their financial advisors, and I just carry it on just to understand their scam. And once we meet up, and when I say meet up, it's because they want to meet on WhatsApp. Like they prompt the WhatsApp video call.
Yeah.
because they want to engage. So they want me to trust them, and meeting face to face, so to speak, is what builds that trust. In addition to 6 to 8 to 10 times a day communicating back and forth with me, and that whole building of that trust is what snares the victims, because once you meet them on video after communicating 60, 80 times over the course of 1 to 2 weeks, now they begin to introduce, oh, I've just made 80% on my investments in crypto. I
Yeah.
can show you how to do that anytime you want. you
Yeah.
know and when I am meeting with these victims of human trafficking, I'm not really scam baiting them like one might think. I'm not trying to trip them up or truly waste their time. I know that these are victims of a crime, that they're being held against their will. And my entire motivation is just to understand it and reverse engineer their methodology, so I can just show my audiences this is what you're up against.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with a number of people, and because I think a lot of people picture hacking as some guy at a computer and he's got some magical way of like breaking into everything. But yet, from my perspective, the most hacks are either insiders, or it's social engineering, it's bribery, it's buying information from customer support teams of companies, and so this whole social engineering thing is definitely, I think, I mean, it's a massive problem. And then you throw AI into it, and now you can do attempt to do social engineering on a massive scale. Like there's no limit. It's not one person trying to hack somebody. It's a AI computer that's loaded up all your contact numbers and everybody who's ever texted you and all your emails, and LinkedIn and then can match all that up and really mess with people. I think we're just starting to see the beginning of that. Of course, the voice cloning and all that.
So what most don't realize, fully understand, is that it is at this point all human hacking. And let me clarify what I mean by saying that. So there is about 175, from my calculation, 175 billion records compromised in the past 15, 20 years.
Yeah,
175 billion. That's all of our information. That's every
yeah,
man, woman, and child, name, address, phone number, email address, mobile phone number. It's 15 billion passwords, right? It's all of our social media, account numbers, and so forth, right?
yep,
So they, meaning the bad actors, the organized criminals, have as much information as they're ever going to need, and they're just using it against us to spear fish us, right? To go right after us with name, address, phone number, you name it, enough information to socially engineer. Like all the security that's ever going to be needed in the history of man is already available to us, right? These CISOs of the world, they know what they're doing. They are the unsung heroes. They are the like the firefighters, the teachers, the first responders. The CISOs are the reason why the lights are on today. Okay.
mhm,
They are the reason why you and I enjoy the quality of life that we do, because they're making sure that the critical infrastructures that you and I enjoy are functional. Okay. When I say
mhm,
unsung heroes, they truly are the heroes amongst us, that nobody has any clue who they are. All that being said, what they are up against is that while they have all the necessary security in place to make sure that their infrastructures are in fact safe, it's your mom, it's your
yeah,
dad, it's your sister who's maybe widowed. It's it's the people in the organization that truly don't recognize risk when the email comes in, the phone rings, or they get the text message. They're the same people that don't really lock the doors to their homes, even have a home security system. They don't manage their passwords at
yeah,
all. They don't usually use two-factor authentication. They just don't truly engage in risk because they don't truly believe in it. And I have information like to provide you to explain what that means and why the existing level of security awareness training is ineffective, due to the fact that the dichotomy between what people think security is and what it truly isn't, and is their misunderstanding of it, and in their hearts they don't embrace it, because we are just creatures that are living in a state of denial and fear, and all of that is a lot. But I unravel all of that in a awareness presentation that I deliver, that kind of gets people to a level where, oh, that's what security is, that's how I engage, that's what it means to me. This is something that I want, and none of that is discussed currently in the type of training that's available due to the fact that I don't know that the CISO truly recognizes that their own employees are deficit when it comes to the topic in which they are uh, proficient at.
Yeah, well, I think like one of the gaps I see with businesses, like the BYOD for cell phones. You're basically relying on every one of your staff doing all the right behavior to protect themselves, not clicking on links, not clicking on images and stuff with tracking pixels, and then they walk into the company office behind the corporate Wi-Fi, and what can that phone get access to? And that's really the only gap I see for CISOs. And maybe that's not like the CISO's role today, but um, a lot of it does come down to just how people's behavior.
Yeah, it truly is. So,
Yeah,
I've been doing what I do for all of my teens and adult life. And what I've come up with is that, in being a dad, learning how to navigate two young girls and being married, I think that like over the course of my lifetime has softened me and has made me much more empathetic and
yeah,
understanding of others. And that evolution of just, being a better human has made me more in tune with others and what their fears and worries and concerns are. And doing what I do in the world of security has made me a bit more attuned to why people resist it. Okay. And so coming from personal security, I've got an understanding that I think that if people understood and saw this and believed it the way that I do, is that first and foremost, all security is personal. It begins with the individual. So we talk about personal security, right? And so keeping like information security, cybersecurity separate just for a moment, right? All security fundamentally begins with the individual, with the human. And personal security, like the definition of it might be like, the avoidance of violence in one's life, right?
mhm,
Personal protection, preventing physical assault, preventing a home invasion. Like, personal security starts with violence prevention in the physical world, okay? But then when you look at all security being personal, it's not just in the physical world today. It's obviously, what goes on online as well. Personal security is,
yeah,
being cyberbullied. It's having your identity stolen. I mean, it doesn't get more personal than your identity when you think about it, your social
yeah.
security number, right? And so when you come at security from the perspective that all security is personal, then people begin to look at it in a very different way. It becomes like a more holistic perspective. And that holistic perspective is designed that, like, where all security is personal is the core belief that people protect what they love. And by
Mhm.
teaching someone to secure, say, their child's digital footprint or their own identity, their own home for that matter, your children while you're sleeping, right? You create a more secure employee at work. So you kind of go back to where the people are in their lives, where the employees are in their own lives, and start with them first. And they begin to look at security a little bit differently. Because as is right now, most security awareness training is compliance based. It's, do this, don't do that, or else. There are repercussions as a result of it. And I look at that as essentially putting the cart before the horse. You're basically saying, here are all these things that you need to be aware of for us,
Mhm.
because you are responsible for protecting the data which you are entrusted with. Whereas you're not even addressing the employee where they are in their lives and their worries and their fears and their concerns about their own, you know, security, of their children, of their loved ones, of their own identity. And so putting the cart before the horse in that regard, the employee themselves, they don't really look at risk in their own lives effectively because they don't understand. They don't even know what to do. They don't even lock their doors or have a home security system. And so that issue there, I unravel with a series of questions that, we can certainly get into.
Awesome. Well, I think anyone who's watching this is going to understand that you've got a long background in this, very passionate. You've had some life experiences that have shaped your choice in careers here. So it sounds like you've made an excellent choice, especially since you've been doing it so long. Um, so let's talk about Protect Now if we can, because you're doing all of this consulting educating people through this entity called ProtectNow. Can you just give the listeners like a high level overview of what ProtectNow is?
Yeah. So, when prior to COVID, we were out training on the road, like, providing security, what I call security appreciation training. And security appreciation essentially is the shift from awareness, which is knowing, to appreciation, which is caring. And so when employees appreciate how security protects their own lives, behavior changes permanently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole putting the horse out front, right? So you start with showing them what security is and isn't. And that means bridging what we call the security appreciation gap. So Protect Now's role is to bridge that gap, that chasm between an employee's intellectual understanding of risk, which is awareness, and the emotional commitment to act on that knowledge, which is appreciation. And so prior to COVID, like that's all we did, like out in the road, training in person. And then COVID hit and that just completely stopped. Like there
Yeah.
was no more of that because obviously no one's getting on a plane. And then obviously like we began to conduct ourselves much more online, virtually. And but we started to see in 2023 that the phone started to ring a lot more. Emails started to come in from CISO saying, "Hey, listen, like we've been doing the whole phishing simulation training thing, and it's solving that problem. But what we're finding is like it's kind of plateaued to a certain degree. That we're not really getting the results that we want and that we need. And truly, what we're looking for right now is we just want people to care. We just want
Yeah.
them to care about security because we're not really finding that that's what we're doing right now is working. And so that that meant that like since that time 2025 was our best year ever due to the fact that like most compliance training has really plateaued and now like they want more interactive type training that actually gets the employee to care about security. And so when we walk into a room when we're hired by a company, 95% of the time it's because they're in a position now where the employees like they're just not getting the messaging, right? And so when I walk in the room and I'm introduced, I get on the platform and I'm literally looking at a few hundred people with their arms crossed looking at me with a scowl on their
Yeah.
face, right? Like I'm forced to do this. And so I
Yeah.
start asking them questions. And the questions are, okay, so a few things. How many of you can honestly say, and this is kind of like this process that we're about to embark on is like a process of breaking them down in such a way where you kind of make it really simple for them to understand, what security is and isn't, and asking them a bunch of qualifying questions and kind of like getting them involved in a dialogue versus a monologue, which is what most security awareness training is. It's like
Mhm.
the employee being told what to do via e-learning or animation or talking head or even an instructor that's telling them what to do versus a dialogue which is like, okay, let's talk, let's get into this thing together. So I start asking them questions, and the first questions are around like, okay, so how many of you can honestly say that you're using a different passcode across all of your multiple accounts,
Mhm.
both in person and I'm sorry, both personally and professionally? How many of you can honestly say a different passcode? In every single presentation I've ever done, if I get 15% of the room to
Mhm.
raise their hand that they're using a different passcode, that's a lot. 20% is unheard of. That doesn't happen. Okay. Which
Yeah.
means that 80+% of employees, wherever I speak, are all using the same passcode across multiple accounts, especially in their personal lives. Right.
Yep.
And then the next question is, okay, so how many of you are using two-factor authentication, right? Both personally and professionally, including your personal email. If it's usually a little bit more, if we get 20%, that's a lot, which means that 80+% of all employees are using the same passcode across multiple accounts, and they're not using two-factor authentication, especially in their personal lives, which
Yep.
truly right there tells us that they don't truly believe in security. They look at it as a hassle. It's something that
Yeah.
it's not my job, it's not my responsibility. I don't want to have to deal with this. Okay. And that's both personally and professionally. Okay. And then as I say to them, okay, so, and I show them, I'll take them online and we'll do quick searches. I have 21 million usernames and passcodes on my own computer that I show them that I got from the dark web.
Yeah.
Like I show
Yeah.
them raw data from the dark web, right? And they start like looking at me and they're like, "Oh, those poor people." I'm like,
Yeah.
Who do you think those poor people are?
Yeah.
Those poor people are you. It's me. It's all of us. It's everybody. Right. And then as I show them that, they're like, oh, hey, this is like really serious stuff. Like my credentials are out there on the dark web. I explained to them that there's 15 billion of your
Yeah.
passwords online. And now they're like, oh, okay. So, all right. So now, like, as their arms are crossed, what happens now is their arms start to go down by their side. And now they start to physically actually lean in. And now, as they lean in, now they have questions. Now their hands go up. Now they want to know, right? And as I point out, like I'll say to them, okay, so how many of you actually lock your doors? I might get, depending on where I am in the country, I might get like 60% of the room, which means like 6 out of 10 people lock their doors, depending on where you are in the country. You know, a lot of
Mm.
times, like I talk to real estate agents, they sell homes and like the homeowner doesn't even know where the keys are because they've never locked the doors to the house. You know, like
Mm.
a lot of people don't even lock their doors.
Yeah.
But the next question is, how many of you actually have a home security system? Because, you know, all security is personal. It starts at the home, right? It starts with you and your family. If I get 15% of the room to raise their hand that they have a home security system, that's a lot, which means like
Mm.
80+% don't have a home security system. And I say, okay, so I get it. Like you don't have a home security system. And I asked them, okay, so those of you who have chosen not to, why? Why don't you have one? Like you made a decision. And then the answers start to come out, like they begin to justify why they don't have one. And the answers usually are all revolve around like, okay, we don't have a home security system because we have insurance. As if like
Yeah.
insurance is going to protect you at 3 a.m. when somebody breaks into your house and they mean to do you harm. You know, like they haven't really
Yeah.
thought that one out, right? And then someone says, okay, we don't have a home security system because my husband says if they're going to get in, they're going to get in. There's not much we can do to prevent that, which truly is a fatalistic view of layers of protection of security. And this is a lot of employees, okay? But the most common answer I get is, well, we don't have a home security system because I don't want to live like that, they say, right? And
Mhm.
people start to nod their heads in agreement with that person. So I'll ask you, when people say, I don't want to live like that, what really are they saying? I think that what they're truly saying is when they say, I don't have a home security system, they're saying because I don't want to live like that. They're saying, I don't want to live in fear. I
Yeah.
don't want to have to worry all the time, is what they're truly saying. They're saying that having a home security system is a constant reminder that there's bad actors out there. I don't want to have to think about those things. And they literally say the words, I just want to be free, as if
Yeah.
like not having to think about security means you don't have to worry about bad actors. And so, what that truly is, and this is a human thing, is that what they're doing is they're choosing openly to function in denial, right? So, when you're
Yeah.
watching the 6 o'clock news and something bad happens in a neighborhood somewhere, something bad and tragic happens somewhere, and then the local news station comes in and they've got a reporter and a cameraman, you know, and the reporter knocks on the neighbor's door and the neighbor comes outside and they start to interview the neighbor. What does the neighbor always say about the tragedy that just happened in the neighborhood?
You're gonna have to tell me.
You never thought it was going to happen here.
Yeah. Okay.
They always say the same thing. I never thought it was going to happen here because they don't want to think or believe it's going to happen in their own neighborhood. And that really is like what most people think. Like they don't want to ever think or believe that these things happen around here. And that's because we choose to not think about those things. Like we watch the news and everybody says the exact same thing. Like it's just going to be a matter of time. And I don't say that to like put people in fear. I say that because that's just the world that we live in, you know? So people actually choose to function in a level of denial when it comes to security. They choose to think those things aren't going to happen to them in my life. And that denial actually allows us to avoid like threats, anxiety. Like nobody wants that, right? And so
Mm.
it's that dichotomy. And so when we discuss security with most people and they think like I don't want to live in fear, I tell them, like I say, I've got 20 plus security cameras. So if somebody's got 20 plus security cameras, what might you think about their disposition, their state of mind? Like if they've got 20 security cameras, they must be what? They often say, oh, paranoid, you
Yeah.
know? And which means most people associate security and paranoia. And they look at people who engage in risk management and security, they must worry all the time. They must truly think that people are out to get them, which is what paranoia actually is. Paranoia is obviously from the medical community will tell you it's a disease of the mind. And when people look at security as a form of paranoia, they are unlikely to want to engage in it because nobody wants to live in fear or worry. So we go the complete opposite direction. And instead of managing risk, we do nothing about it because we don't want to think about it. And those same employees are engaged in risk management because they're forced to, because they're
Mm.
made to through compliance. And so they don't really know what security is to begin with. My CISO is making us do this because they require it. He or she
Mm.
must be paranoid, is what they're thinking. And that is a dichotomy that prevents the employee from actually embracing risk management, from embracing what security is and truly what it isn't.
Yeah. I've
And
always
and
thought of security, whether it's physical or digital security, as that is my freedom. So it's my thinking around having 20 cameras or whatever kind of defense tool I have is so that the perpetrator, the bad actor, will avoid me and go to the person who doesn't want to live in fear, and leave me alone. And maybe it's because I've been hacked before and been in cybersecurity long enough to know like I can be a target. And so to me, putting up your defense is actually this. That's the freedom to me.
yeah, you're obviously a thinking person, right? Most people aren't that well thought out in that regard. Most people, in general, aren't thinking of security as a positive thing to begin with. They don't look at it as freedom. They look at it as worry and fear and paranoia. And so, my role is to break all that down so that when I walk in and the arms are crossed and folded, and they begin to, oh, like this is not what I thought it was going to be. This is actually more about me. That all security is personal. This is about my security. This is about my family. This is about my identity. This is about my home. And security is not about worry or fear or paranoia. It's about putting that seatbelt on. You put that seatbelt on because it's the smart thing to do. It gives you control over that vehicle. It keeps you tight
Mhm.
in the seat should something, run in front of you or a dare or whatever the case might be. So you can have access to the brake and the steering wheel and the gas pedal and so forth. And that's what security fundamentally is. And as you roll that out and challenge their belief systems, they begin to look at security as a positive thing. And then as the hands go up, now they start to ask a ton of questions. And when you create a comfortable environment like that, one of the most common questions that people ask me is, how do I know what links are okay to click
Yeah.
when I'm searching something in Google? Now, you and I, look at that question as, really, like that's the question you have today? But that's most people because they just don't know. And here we are, we've had access to the internet for 30 years, and people still don't know what links are okay to click because they just don't know, because they've never actually had the opportunity to sit down with a security expert that can actually walk them through these processes. And what is cybersecurity? What? You've been doing this since early 2000s. What is it, like
Yeah.
25, 30 years old? It's a relatively new thing for us. And most
Yeah.
consumers aren't engaged in personal security, never mind information security, at a level that they should be where we're at with AI and deep fakes and voice cloning.
Yeah. Well, you bring back a memory of where it was one of my first experiences of having to worry about links and where I got the fear put in me is I happened to be working with an email security company that did spam protection and it kept people from clicking links. And when you did a Google search, it would put like a warning label, an icon over uh, your search results. It'd be green, it'd be yellow, it'd be red, it'd be like a spider or something that would warn you, like don't click on this. And if you were to search on uh, just some, what would it be, like a screensaver, you do Google search on screensaver, well, like a third of the screensavers had warnings on them that this contains spyware, malware. And Google bought the company, and within probably less than a week they stripped that part out of it.
Too bad.
And that's when I realized, and because a lot of them were like sponsored links, like people were paying to advertise this link, this is a sponsored link where it's like get a free uh, screensaver here, and it would have that warning over it. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, like money rules everything. Like
Yeah.
this is kind of scary, and so it's difficult. I think it's better these days, but you've also brought back this memory where I've done startups for so long, but I worked for a couple large companies because I would do a startup and get acquired, and I'd work for large company. And my memory was that most people, whenever they rolled out like a security service and said you have to log in this way, or here's a little token with the random number on it, that people actually focused more on how do I get around it
Still
than
today.
just how to make myself secure. That it
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
how do I get around it? Hey, were you able to get around this?
Besides the inconvenience of that, the main reason is what I call the human blind spot. Okay. So we are, as humans, what is considered an interdependent species, which means that we are dependent upon each other for our survival, for our procreation. And the basis of being interdependent means that we need to trust one another, right? And that trust that we have for each other, it overcomes our intellectual decision making when it comes to fraud. So what that means is we have what I call the human blind spot. Okay, the human blind spot is that psychological instinct to trust, especially trust what's familiar to us, right? Phone calls, emails, text messages, what we read, what we consume in digital media. We trust. We trust the people that we interact with on a regular basis, right? And ultimately, that human blind spot is the cognitive gap where biological trust overrides digital suspicion, leaving the door wide open to all forms of fraud, especially AI enhanced deception. And so, if you all day, every day throughout your life give the benefit of the doubt all the time, then chances are when the bad guys are using the truth as the ruse, which is what they do, truthful scenarios,
Yeah.
usually with a little bit of a twist. That's how they get access to us. And so if you're trusting all day long, right, you're really never thinking strategically when it comes to managing risk. You're just not thinking that anybody ever would want to do you harm to begin with. Security is not normal and it's not natural to us. Trusting is. Not trusting means you're recognizing that there are bad people out there that mean to do bad things. But we would prefer not to think about that at all, you know? And I've
Mhm.
come to the conclusion over the course of my career, and this is easily verified, that like 97% of the people that we will ever meet in the course of our lives, 97% are worthy of our trust. What that basically means is like that 97%, the majority, have good intentions. They're good people, you know.
Mhm.
They sometimes lie, they sometimes steal, they sometimes deceive, they sometimes harm, but in their heart of hearts, they're generally good. You know, they're worthy of your trust. But like 2 to 3, and maybe even more, 4 or 5%, some say as much as 6% of males, especially, um, are what the medical community would consider antisocial personality disorders, sociopaths, psychopaths, essentially hardcore narcissists that don't experience, like you and I, empathy, sympathy, remorse, guilt. Like they literally are the definition of having no shame. Okay. And so it's that 3, 4, 5, 6% of the world's population, literally, that make a lot of noise. And they're the ones that are going after that 97%. They
Mhm.
are the wolves, they are the lions going
Mhm.
after the gazelles. And we are the antelope or the rabbits. And most people don't frame security in that regard. And they say, "Oh, I'm never going to be one of those
Yeah.
rabbits or gazelles. That's other people." And that
Mhm.
denial allows us to function in a relatively, chaotic world that's on fire, you know? And so breaking down security in such a way where they begin to look at risk as something that like is important to them, as something that they can use to protect themselves, their own identity, their own bank account, their own family. They begin to look at security a little bit differently in a training session. And the results of that are what I call the kitchen table effect. And the kitchen table effect is like that multiplier effect where successful training ends with the employee teaching the concepts to their family, essentially cementing those lessons for life. And that's how you essentially change hearts in order to change minds. And ultimately, what I call that is the strategic human firewall. We all know what a firewall is, right? A human firewall blocks deception. It
Okay.
recognizes risk. It looks at risk in its proper perspective. It's a proactive governance. It's a mindset that turns employees from a passive target, which is what most of them are. Most people in general are passive targets. It can happen to me, into an active
Mm.
detection layer. They begin to see it coming. They are proactively thinking securely, strategically, not
Yeah.
necessarily like where there's worry or fear, but intellectually they have an understanding of it. And this is they become from a passive target to an active detection layer. It's a shift from I trust what I see, I trust almost everything, to I verify everything. They're looking at the world, even if it's just a little bit differently, so that they ultimately appreciate the value security has in their life. That's the
Okay.
goal. That's what Protect Now does.
Okay. Now, protect now. Like, who's the perfect prospect? Like, what profile is it? Is it a business? Is it a family? Is it a high profile individual? Is it all the above?
So, our sweet spot is often look at. I just did a presentation in California to one of the largest telecommunication companies. They have chips. They provide chips and they built the 5G network. Like you wouldn't have to dig too deep to figure out who they are. Lots of patents around mobile, and I did a presentation in front of 200 of their employees in this
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful auditorium, right? Within their organization, which I've never seen anything like it. They have orchestras play there. Anyways, it was only in front of 200 employees, but they have like tens of thousands of employees throughout the world. But those 200 employees were the voice of the 4,000 people that we broadcast to
Yeah.
worldwide, you know and that presentation was designed to be the voice. Like, it was an interactive event between me and all 200, which were asking the same questions that all those worldwide had. No matter where they are in the world, we all have the same cares and concerns. We all have the same frustrations. We all have the same you know unhealthy viewpoint of what security is: fear, paranoia, worry, versus what
Yeah.
security, should be, which is control. And so that large corporation was able to get the message out to all of their people all at the same time. That same group in 50 employees in a small title company, they have the same fears, concerns, and worries. I speak to all those various groups because they all have the same frustrations. They all have the same compliance issues that they need to be concerned about. Making sure that they're engaged in a certain level of making sure that they're training their people at least once a year to show that they're doing the due diligence, which is frustrating because how can you engage in risk management once a year? Cybersecurity month, it should be cybersecurity every day. And phishing simulation training should be an ongoing thing, not just once. But again, phishing simulation training is still putting the cart before the horse. And that compliance trap, I think, is a really big issue. That if you're still in that, and not making security personal to the employee, I think they're going to continue to find you getting the same unfortunate results, and the same employee is going to still click the link. More and more now, I'm meeting more and more people that either themselves or they know someone who's been fired
Yeah.
because they just keep failing those tests. And
Yeah.
I don't know that that's a failure of the employee more than it's a failure of the training to not meet that employee where they're at.
Yeah.
And with AI and deep fakes and voice cloning, uh, nobody's prepared for this. And I
Yeah.
think that with that, you're going to start to see the CISOs, the company officers, are going to have to start tightening things up in such a way where the workarounds that you mentioned, that employees aren't going to be able to do anything. They're not going to be able to function at all because you're going to have to tighten things up so much that they can't do their jobs effectively. And because there's so much risk because they don't look at risk effectively to begin with. Therefore, you're gonna have to tighten things up in such a way where it's gonna mess with productivity.
Yeah, the AI stuff could be a whole separate 2-hour conversation for all the stuff that I see coming on that side of it. Now, in terms of the profile of the customer, it sounds like you're doing the biggest type of companies, global companies. Are you
And
going all the
small.
way down to like the size of a family office, like 10 employees, 15, or is there like a limit? And the reason I'm asking this is just because if people watch this and they're a small business of 5 people, like I wouldn't want to drive a bunch of people to spend your business cycle time, and so just one way to
I've spoke
qualify.
Yeah, I did a presentation not too long ago for a company that a very small construction company that does very well in Florida, and but actually from New York. They actually built the Trump Tower, and
Mm.
they very small company. I spoke in a room of like maybe 15 people, and they got phished. They were asked. They got a fish to wire money for a job they were doing to a bank account for several $100,000. And this is what I'm seeing more and more now. Like it's not hacking networks; it's hacking humans. So
Yep.
the vendor's email is compromised because they're using the same passcode across multiple accounts. The vendor, and they're asked to pay a bill, and the bill was for several $100,000, which they would normally pay the bill because it's the vendor and they pay the bills because they're not delinquent in their finances. And but the email that they received and the way it was written was a little too appropriate, meaning the language was not what the vendor would use because the relationship they had with the vendor, they would drop profanities in and out of conversation. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
And so they were confused by the appropriateness of the communication, which is how they detected what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so prior to paying the bill, they got on the phone and say, "Hey, I just got this email from you." And the guy's like, "Are you effing kidding me? I would never send an email like that." you
Yeah.
know? And so which I thought was really funny.
Yeah. That's a
And
good story.
as you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that said, like it can happen to anybody. And it's the smallest mom and pops that are doing several $1,000,000 a year in sales that are
Mm.
huge, huge targets for this. And so it's everybody at this point. Anybody who has money in the bank has risk at this point. It is
Yeah.
hacking humans. And the smallest moms and pops, they don't have CISOs. If anything, they might have a fractional VCISO, if that at all. It might be like, their brother-in-law that occasionally comes in and crawls around underneath the desks and is rewiring things and updates their network, but they generally don't have any security in place at all. So they usually need the most.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really think they think, well, I don't have like this big bank account balance they can go after. I don't have $1 million of crypto, but even data is important to these hackers because they can sell it on the dark web over and over and over. So, and I tell people like, hey, if you get SIM swapped or they find a way to hack into your Gmail account or any email account you have, and they'll sync up an app to it and download 3 years of your email. Is that something that you would care about? And when I phrase it that way, it's like people start to think like, well, I've got a tax refunds in there, wire transfers, medical, banking, all of that, and being a victim myself in 2018, uh, that's what I fear is like, if I did for years, like when is this data hack, the emails they could have gotten going to come back on me? And I've been very fortunate. So I think I got hit by an amateur. I think they were going for my crypto and nothing else. But just data. They're even doing a lot of harassment at this point because they're bored. They have a lot of time.
I have functioned as an expert witness in cases where the victim's SIM was swapped, and then ultimately the crypto was liquidated from their account.
Yep.
And the majority of those breaches begin with the email being compromised. And
Yeah.
once they're inside the person's email account, then from there, it's easy to change the passcode for their mobile phone account. And once they change the passcode for the mobile phone account, now they function as the actual, holder of the mobile phone itself, the account holder. And then from there, swapping out the SIM is much easier. And that right there is due to the fact that 80+% of the general public is not using a different passcode for all of their accounts, and they're not using two-factor authentication. And so it makes it that SIM swap that much more feasible. And it shouldn't be that easy. And once that's done, then you're taking over the Coinbase account. You're taking over two-factor authentication.
Yeah, a lot of
Although,
people, the mobile industry is kind of unique in the sense, like if I wanted to steal from your bank account, it'd be very difficult for me to walk into a bank and say, "Hey, I'm Robert, and I want to withdraw, $3,000," and get away with impersonating you. But in the mobile industry, somebody could go into a phone store because basically you're opening up a credit account. They've got your social
right,
security, your birth date, all your payment information's online. It's a credit account, so somebody can go into the store and say, "Hey, my name's Mark Reitzman. I want to get the new iPhone 17 to finance it on my account," and use the spiff sort of to get like some, because a lot of these stores are independently owned, so you're relying on them, like profiling their own employees, managing them, make sure they're doing all the right things, and they've got the incentive. Well, I'm going to sell a phone to this guy, and somebody can walk out of a store with the phone in my name, and if
those
they don't,
independent.
if they don't get if they don't get verified as me, then they'll learn from it because there's no penalty for doing it. They'll just be, oh, you know what, we can't verify you, so we can't do this. Then they'll go drive 5 miles and go to the next store. They learn whatever it is they need, and people don't really. And so the mobile industry is weird in the sense that you can actually get social engineered by other people. You're not you might not even be in the equation. Somebody else could be social engineered, and that ends up impacting you. And so yeah, there's a lot of lawsuits, sim swap lawsuits, that go to court, and people don't realize that they usually go into arbitration court too. And
And
you've got
it's
to.
not just the team. It's not just the T-Mobiles and the AT&Ts and the Verizon stores. It's the small mom and pops that have
Yeah,
way too much power. They
yeah,
have way too much power. That could they could be introduced with $1,000 and say, "Hey, I need you to swap this SIM outs for me." And now they're engaged in organized crime. Now it's the RICO Act, right? So those mom and
yeah,
pops is where you see a lot of those same swaps taking place because there's incentive for them, and they don't care. They
yeah.
don't care about the victim. They care that they're getting $1,000 to swap out the SIM. That's a huge problem,
Oh yeah.
and one
They're
that is
unhappy
not
with their
effectively
job. They
being.
think they don't get paid enough, and making $1,000 in 5-10 minutes. It's big. I was told an interesting story a couple of weeks ago. I get to talk to some people that are in sort of not pure intelligence, but they deal with people from intelligence. And so this guy from one of the federal government agencies was telling him that they're talking about one of these smash and grab, where a gang of people go into like an iPhone store and they steal all the iPhones and rip things out, run out the store. And he said, this guy told me, he's like, that's a cover. What they do is they go in there and they steal that to cover for what they're really trying to do, and that is to go in and steal all the iPads from the employees, because they kind of forget. They're like shaken up. They just got robbed, and then they just tell them, like, you know what, go home, settle down, and they just kind of forget. They don't log these iPads out. And so they take these iPads that have access to people's mobile accounts and credit records and things like that. And then it made me think, like, oh my God, there's just so many things that happen like that. Are they really, like, sometimes a twist of what is it? Are they really after? And it just makes sure the creative ways that people are coming after us. And like I said, it's like you have no control whether that store is secure or not. But but when they get ripped off like that, you can get penalized big time.
Big time. Yeah, yeah.
And so it's tough, but we can only do what we can control ourselves, and that is all the right behavior. And
Well, it does start with us. So, like as we started this conversation off, like all security really is personal, and the idea behind what we do at Protect Now is that we create small changes in behavior, and the goal is to shift from security awareness to what we call security appreciation. And you and I think, talked about this, but prior to starting the podcast. Like security appreciation is the shift from awareness, which is knowing, right, to appreciation, which is caring, right. And once people care about security, when employees appreciate the value of how security protects, their own lives, right, behavior changes permanently, right.
Yep.
We call that the security appreciation gap, right. It is the that chasm between an employee's intellectual understanding of risk, which is awareness, and the emotional commitment to act on that knowledge, which is appreciation. Right? And once you appreciate the value that security has in your life, you're going to start to do things differently, both personally and professionally. Phishing simulation training is not a burden; it becomes a challenge.
Yep.
And if you look at all security being personal, like if you look at just getting on a flight, you and I fly quite a bit. I'm sure you're like a million miler somewhere, right? What is the first thing that the flight attendant says to you when it comes to that mask? What does she say?
To put it on.
Put it on yourself first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You put it on yourself first because you are more effective helping
Yeah. That's
others
right. Yeah.
when you take care of yourself first. And so all security being personal to you, right? You take care of yourself first. You're much more effective in protecting the data in which you are entrusted with.
Okay. When you asked about the mask, I was thinking of like the COVID era. You're talking about the air masks that come out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's so many lessons to be learned and so many simple things that people do. I always tell people, and I haven't done a video on this topic for a long time, but one of the common mistakes I see people making is like they'll set up an Android phone or an iPhone. They have their Apple ID, their Gmail account that they use, and then they'll use that same email ID to set up a Coinbase account, Bank of America, and then they use it to like email friends and family, and it's like people kind of forget that they're basically emailing their login out. And there's AI tools at this point where you could target somebody and say, "Tell me all the emails associated with this person," and they'll find emails that you forgot you even used for 10, 12 years, and a hacker can then just simply go to like all the top banks, all the top crypto, and put your email in there and say forgot password and test it.
Yeah,
And does it ask for an SMS? Now they know, like, well, if I can SIM swap this person, like I own them, I can steal everything from it. If it asks for a 6-digit authenticator code, well, now I know I need to SIM swap them, get into their email, try and reset their authenticator passcode. And a lot of time, these crypto accounts, most of the time the wallets are public, so they can, if they know you well enough to even know your addresses, then they could even check, is this person even worth it? And so a lot of crazy stuff going on. Certainly, the crypto space makes anybody a target. I've talked to some people that'll say like, well, I store 100% of my crypto on cold storage, and I remind them that, hey, the fact that if people know you own crypto makes you a target. It makes everything else about you an indirect target. And they may not get
High
your
value
crypto,
target. Yeah.
but if they'll go after your messaging apps and your iCloud and your business accounts. I one of our customers got SIM swapped by her partner, somebody she was dating, lived with for years. They built up a tech business, and they broke up. He SIM swapped her, and then he destroyed her business. He took down the payroll, took down the website, took down basically everything associated with the company, and put her into bankruptcy. And so, it can be a remote uh, organized crime all the way from Cambodia or one of those type countries, but can also be somebody that's very, very close to you.
Yeah, I one of the s- tips that I provide when I'm doing a live training is, and I've seen this too often, is most people don't realize, like in web-based email, Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, AOL, for that matter, Outlook, we have automatic email forwarding, a feature built into
Yep.
email providers. You go into your settings menu, and automatic email forwarding is right there, and
Yep.
it's there for like administration purposes to automatically forward an email to, say, your administrator to take care of, you set up a folder for social media, whatever the case might be, right?
Yep.
Most people don't even know that this feature even exists, right? And so when somebody gets access, somebody meaning like like a boyfriend, ex-husband, spouse, or the employee, or criminal, the first thing they're going to do if they have any bad intent is to set up automatic email forwarding to them, or an
Yep.
email address, of course, that they control, that might be somewhat anonymous, and in perpetuity they're going to be receiving all of your communications in perpetuity without you even knowing it, unless you go into
Yeah.
your settings menu to figure it out. And so I do presentations to real estate agents all the time because, like we said, they get murdered, and they're also handling a lot of sensitive information as well. And I'm explaining this to the agents, and one of the agents comes up to me at break, and she shows me her laptop because she checked it out while she was listening to the presentation, of an email address in her automatic email forwarding of a guy she had dated 3 years earlier. They had a bad breakup. She had to get a
Wow.
restraining order against the guy, and he had been getting her emails for years, and she had no idea. And I think that that's a lot of people.
Yeah, and so many password resets, logins, authentication goes through your email. And when I got SIM swapped and they got into one of my emails, that was actually one of the first things I checked, was that email forwarding. And so I think that's such a great point, such a great tip. And of course, I'd talk to people all the time where they're just like, man, I'm being stalked. Somehow they know like where I'm at, or uh,
There
and
it
and
is.
and so I always tell them, like, on your phone, just make sure that your location hasn't been shared by somebody that got access to your phone. Did a share location forever, and uh, and I've been kind of forgetting about this email forward, and so I'll have to make sure I put that back on the list.
Yeah,
And that's a great tip, because yeah, if somebody has that email, you wouldn't even know. If you don't know that feature
you
exists and
wouldn't
you don't
even
go
know.
check it, like, it could be going on for years. Yeah, that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
So
Look, we got this. Employees got this. CISOs got this. I think it's just a matter of kind of going back to basics. Like, right now, the existing training, like we talked about, compliance based, and that's a trap. That's a trap that they're all in. They're all in this compliance based training trap that is necessary, but I think there needs to be, and in addition to, type of training.
mm,
We don't raise our families with e-learning. We don't
mm,
raise our families in a monologue. It is a dialogue that we have. Your employees, the people that we work with, our coworkers, they are, they're feeling beings, and I'm not asking anybody to like go out and hold your employees' hands and give them a hug. I'm asking to like look at the way in which you engage your own family members that have their own worries, their own fears, their own concerns,
mm,
people that need the guidance in your life to cut the learning curve of life in such a way where you try to help them breathe that much easier in regards to the lessons that life has to teach us, right? And so that same, I guess, engagement that we have with our loved ones, to a degree, needs to be reconsidered when it comes to security awareness training, because we're not looking at security awareness at security effectively to begin with. And so we kind of have to
mm,
back up again, put the horse before the cart, and engage your employees in such a way where, like, you recognize that they look at risk differently than you do, because most CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, and so forth understand, just like you do, what security actually is.
mm.
And most don't. And but once we kind of back up a little bit, and engage them the same way we would the people in our lives that we care most about, and you actually, as the CISO, come off like that, more human like, right? They will appreciate that. They will look at you differently, and they will value the guidance that you're providing them, because they want to know. They truly do worry about these things. They just don't know where to go. What link do I click on Gmail should never be a question that they ask going forward. Once you actually spend, or what link do you click on Google search should never be a question they ask going forward, once you actually spend time with them. And they will love it. All hands on events are perfect for that.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It was a fun conversation, and I love learning from people. You're obviously passionate about what you're doing, and so hopefully we'll get some companies that come to you from this. I really appreciate you coming on. If you can hang out, we'll just say goodbye here, and then I'll close out this. But if you can hang around for a few minutes, and so thanks a lot, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you.